welcome to the Game 9010. We're excited today to be joined by Dr. Kevin Sverduk and Bryan Doody. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to kick off with your bio, Dr. Kevin Sverduk. Okay, we've got some of your positions: Sport Psychologist, Golf Performance Coach, and a full-time faculty member at Long Beach State University. You have published a book, The Performance Mindset, a Process-Focused System. You conduct research in sports psychology, coaching, and motor learning at Long Beach State, where you are also a full-time lecturer. You sound incredibly busy. Your approach encompasses applied psychology, sports science, and Buddhist philosophy.
That sounds about right.
Awesome. I want to mention here that you have a website. It's called thepracticefix.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you graduated from the University of Northern Colorado.
Yep.
All right, I know we have a lot more to dig into, but we're going to quick do a bio for Bryan.
Okay.
Bryan Doody is a former United States Navy corpsman. You worked with the Marine Corps Infantry on 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan and 1 to Yemen. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your service. You are currently in your last semester of graduate school studying sport and exercise psychology.
Yes.
So that's what brings us all together. And I guess I failed to mention I'm your host, Kayla Delano. So happy to be here with both of you. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So can you give us a little bit of your background? Can we just start back as early as you would like to, maybe sport experiences, mm-hmm. or maybe it was in academia that you decided that this was kind of a path that you were going to follow?
Yeah, it really was roundabout. I grew up in Northern California, Alameda, and like a lot of kids, I played a lot of different sports. But then I kind of fell in love with tennis, and I played a lot of junior tennis, high school tennis. I was fortunate enough to go and play collegiate tennis. Mm-hmm. And at that time when I was in college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I just loved playing tennis, and after I graduated, I wanted to see if I could make something with tennis. For a couple of years, I went around playing some tournaments and trying to get on some mini tours, and it didn't quite work out. And so kind of my default at that time, because I was a tennis player, and there was kind of this kind of notion that if you play tennis pretty well, then you probably should be able to teach it well, and I was able to get a job teaching. And I wasn't very good at teaching, but eventually I started to really get into it and really enjoyed working with players and working with juniors and developing juniors. So I did private tennis coaching for about 8 years.
Okay.
And then I had a great opportunity to go to the University of the Pacific to be the men's tennis coach there. So I was hired as the tennis coach and started a kind of a career in coaching. But I also was fortunate when I went there. They had a very strong program in sports sciences, and Dr. Glenn Albaugh was there, who's one of the top sports psychologists in the country at mm-hmm. that time. And so I worked on my master's degree while I was coaching. And that's when I really started getting hooked into sports psychology, because I could instance the 2 main things that really resonated with me was, I was having the experience of coaching these athletes who were playing better in practice than they were in competition. Mm-hmm. And so, sports psychology was helping me answer some of those questions, get to know that. And then the second part was about the zone experience. And, I had experienced that myself as an athlete. And so that really kind of hooked me into getting to know more about the mental side of the game. I enjoyed it so much. I got my master's degree that I decided after about 5 years to go on and pursue a PhD in sports psychology. So I did that. I went to the University of Northern Colorado. And then from there, once graduating, that's how I kind of came to Southern California. I was mm-hmm. looking for academic teaching positions, and I was able to get one at Long Beach State.
Wow, I like how your journey included so many parts that mm-hmm. you've been able to, I feel like, maintain all of them. Mm-hmm. Between interesting too that you said I was bad at teaching, but then did someone help to guide you to become better at that, or you just were invested enough to refine what you were doing?
Well, it was funny. I have this story about that. Is I remember really distinctly my method of teaching was very one way. I would just tell the student, do this, do this, do this, bend your knees, watch the ball, and that got very old and boring, and it made me hate teaching even more. I wasn't effective. My students weren't getting better. And I remember very distinctly during the summer, it was a very busy teaching day. My last lesson of the day was this older woman who had been coming for lessons for probably 6 months and just was not getting better. And she was a very challenging student for me to teach. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know how to get her to play better. And I was actually dreading teaching her. And one day she came, and I was just tired, and I kind of told myself before the lesson, I'm done. I'm not even going to try to teach this. I'm just done. She doesn't get any better. So it was immature, but she comes in, and I said hi, and I have her go to the other side of the net, and I start feeding her balls, and she's missing it, and I decided I'm not going to say anything. I'm just tired. I'm not going to say anything. And she hits her first 10 balls into the net, which was very common. And then the 11th ball she hits over the net. She made an adjustment.
Uh-huh.
And I remember thinking, And then I hit another ball to her, and she hit that one over the net. And I started thinking, what's going on here? And then another thought comes in my mind, like I start getting a little bit upset because I'm like, she's not supposed to get better
on the day when you give up.
Without my help.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, I'm the one that's supposed to help her get better. And so, but I kind of suspended that, and I called her up to the net, and I said, well, your first 10 balls you went in the net, and the next 3 you hit over the net. What did you feel happened? And she says, Kevin, I never forget this. She says, Kevin, I figured out if I get my racket lower than the ball and hit up on it, it goes over the net. Now, this is something I had told her probably 1,000 times.
And she wasn't hearing you.
And so I go, wow. And so then from there, I started experimenting around. Well, let's try another thing. And I said, I want you to try to hit the ball here, and you just tell me, what you do differently. And so I started to change the flow of teaching. Mm-hmm. And it was really, and I didn't have these words for it at that moment, but later on, what I did was I shifted from teaching to facilitating learning. And it was a major shift. And to me, that was like, this is cool. This is a really cool thing. And that was probably the turning point for me. And that probably led me down this path, because the consistent theme with my path, whether it's coaching, teaching classes, working with athletes, and consulting with athletes, is it's about growth and helping them get better. Mm-hmm. And so that was a real kind of turning point for me.
What an incredible share.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very layered, actually.
Yeah.
But true that those moments that really challenge us are moments when we're ready to grow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop over to you real quick, Bryan. You want to tell us about what's your earliest sporting experiences that bring you to where you are now?
I mean, I played sports as a kid growing up my whole life, right? So between baseball, soccer, football, I used to play all these sports growing up. Never thought I would be where I am today doing the psychological health side of sport. But I don't know. I think it was in the military. I was in the military. I was a medic. I worked with the Marine Corps Infantry, and it was during that time I started to kind of have an interest in like psychology or like behavioral health or mental health, and like, why are people reacting differently to the same exact situations that I was a part of or my friends were a part of, right? And so got a real big interest in that. And when I got out, I was so stuck on one career. I was like, I'm going to be a physician assistant, and this is what I'm going to do. I translate my skills from the military to being a PA, and started knocking the schooling out for that. And in order to get from Long Beach City College to Long Beach State, they had like a bridge program where if you declared as a sports psychology major, you got in automatically, so you didn't have to compete or anything along those lines. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm knocking out the prereqs for PA school. I'm going to use this bridge to do sports psychology. And I just wanted my major in sports science, right, to have that science degree. And got to Long Beach State. First semester, I had a class with Kevin Sverduk here, and changed my life on the way I thought about sports psychology. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So I started picking his brain, about his job and what he does and how long he's been doing it and why he does it, and super interested in it. So kind of was like shifting my path. Like, man, I could see myself doing this, like working with athletes, wearing gym shorts and a t-shirt to work. Like that's my style. And so just started picking his brain, and one thing led to another, and I sat down and thought really hard about what I was doing and what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. And so decided to pursue this and go this way with the psychology stuff with sports psychology. So here I am. And it was him that, changed my perspective on what I thought I wanted to do with my life. So it's pretty cool.
And you look so humble too.
It's nice to hear that.
I've shared that with him before too, and he, and he's a very humble gentleman. So, that was kind of my path, and that's where I am today. So here I am.
How exciting to have you both here at different steps in your journey.
Yeah.
Could you tell us maybe about some things that have surprised you along the way into getting where you are now?
Surprises. Well, when you start out, I mean, you can get caught up in a lot of the theories and the methods, and there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. Very, very similar to how I approached teaching tennis originally. Very structured and regimented. And I think the main thing that I discovered is the number one thing that kind of causes the positive change is not your method. It's you. You're the agent of change, not the method that you're using. And that's a major shift when I really started to embrace that, because I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could be genuine. I'm just going to be who I am, right? And I said my growth is to work on myself, get to know myself. Like I feel like you have to get to know yourself before you can help somebody. Okay, and so that was probably a big part of it. I went in early, kind of like where Bryan is. Thinking that there's a way to do it, and he's learning it very early, much earlier than I did. That there isn't. You find your own way to be a helper, and so I think that's a big part.
Really powerful advice that I'm sure just continues to unfold. I know you had mentioned the importance of developing philosophy. I'm sure that what you've just spoken about is a part of that. I mean, have you articulated philosophy?
Yeah, philosophy to me is huge. You have to have a reason, finding the reason why you do things. Again, so that you can be genuine. You're going to do things best if you're genuine about doing them. But in order to become genuine, you have to kind of go inside and say, well, what am I about? Why am I doing this? My background, I had a lot of. I didn't study it, but in my early 20s, I really started to get into learning about Buddhism and meditation and the philosophy behind that, and it really helped make sense for me. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it made sense for me of how I looked at sport and competition and success. That it wasn't about an end product, but it was about a process.
Yes.
And so I really, I think that's a big part of the work that I do is trying to help people find a philosophy that's theirs that they can build from.
So if you could tell us, how did Kevin ask you to articulate a particular philosophy in the course of you teaching the class, and you have a philosophy? Did you come up with one yourself?
So yeah, I think it's been an ongoing process. Him and I have talked about it back and forth a lot, and it's a lot of just kind of coming up with it yourself, having your own philosophy of the way you're going to do things, and there's not a right or a wrong way to consult or work with athletes, and that's something that Kevin's talked to me about. And I kind of say this is, we want to have our own. We want to do it ourselves, right? And a friend of mine, when I was in the military, got stuck in this platoon and put in this platoon. I shouldn't say stuck. Put in this platoon, and the guy that was there before me was a really, really good corpsman and did a lot of good things on their prior deployment. And so when I got to the platoon, everyone was like, "You have some big shoes to fill. He's a great corpsman. Like, you have a lot to live up to." Him and I got really close, and he was like, "Hey, don't feel pressured. You have your own shoes to fill. You don't need to fill my shoes. You have your own shoes to fill." And that stuck with me, and that sticks with me today, because I really think, and I truly feel, if we start competing with other people, then we're failing ourselves. We need to compete with ourselves, and that's kind of my approach to consulting with athletes, is get them to understand, like, we're our best, worst enemy, and we need to compete with ourselves every single day to be able to perform better. So, yeah.
It's absolutely true. And I think a celebration of the individual, and definitely, like you said, a self-motivator. How am I developing in my own self-knowledge and self-growth and awareness? And study. Can you tell me, Kevin, about if this is kind of a personalized approach where you are asking someone to grow in the way that you're asking yourself to grow, and then you're kind of sharing that knowledge with them. Does that carry over into working with a team?
Well, I think, there's our individual identity, but there is an identity of a team, and again, trying to help teams find that identity. And I remember in this coaching book by Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke coach, he says early in the book that he treats every team each year as a brand new team, even if he has 6 or 7 players returning from the previous team. He doesn't make the mistake of, okay, last year we kind of had this identity and this culture, and then, okay, this year we just kind of retain it. And he says he doesn't do that. He says we got a whole new team, even if it's 1 or 2 new players, but the players are older, and so, again, indicating the importance of helping the team find its own identity. So yes, I think it's important to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. And does that, how much of that do you guide? I mean, some of it you're trying to discover, and then other things maybe you're trying to kind of correct or help people to gel.
Yeah, I mean, there's some education in there too. I mean, a lot of these kids are younger, and they haven't been exposed to as many different kind of ideas, and so I kind of will throw out some different ideas about, okay, well, you guys could go this way or you could go this way, but ultimately I want them to find it, because I want them to have ownership of it and not feel like it's being cast onto them, and that takes a lot of skill, a lot of patience. You have to be willing to endure, some mistakes that might go along the way, but I think that's important to do that, and I think ultimately what you get out of that is a very high-functioning team that will be able to handle adversity.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that you value all of their investment, that you're seeing all the individuals and the fact that all of them are pulling toward this, something they create.
Right.
Even though you're just asking the right questions. Going back to that initial story, you're just going to ask the question. How did that change make you feel? That's so cool. So is there a time when you can determine about fit? Like if there's a right fit with an athlete, a team, or a coach? Are there sometimes when you maybe remove yourself or see a problem area that you're able to address? Yeah,
there, and that's a mistake that, again, I made early on, is this idea that I'm good and I can work with anybody. And that's not true. And I kind of let my gut feeling kind of get in there. It's like sitting down with somebody for coffee. You know if you're connecting. And then if you're not. If you're kind of like, it's kind of like pretending and you're manufacturing that. So I kind of let that guide me, and I've been honest with a lot of coaches and teams and athletes, because I know they feel it too. I say, I don't know that this is a good fit. I remember I had a professional golfer that I was sitting down with, and I just it was just forced. It was always forced, and finally I said, I don't think that there's anything else that I can give you. And I said it, and I didn't cast blame on him, or I said it's just one of those things, and he instantly said, yeah, I don't think it is quite the right fit, and that was the way we ended it, and it was great, because that night I felt so much relief. Yeah. Where prior to it I was like, this is such a tough client. I just don't know how to connect. I just don't know. I felt, and I would just kind of dread it almost. And I got to a point, that's not why I'm doing this work. I don't want to be dreading the work. And so I've kind of learned, sometimes you have to just, you're not the right person.
Sure.
Yeah.
It sounds too like that maybe takes a little bit of time, that you might not know necessarily what it is that's not building that connection, and you maybe give it a couple of times to meet up and continue to ask the questions. What is it they're looking for? I think it's always really helpful too if the person you're striving to make that connection with has an interest.
Mhm.
Like maybe they already have a goal. It's
Mhm.
not like you're starting from scratch.
Mhm.
They're seeing a need that you could fill, and then in that case, you'd say, "Oh yeah, I do know something about that."
Yeah.
Whether it's confidence or overcoming failure, etc.
Yeah, so a good example of that is I remember one time I was just started working with the team, having individual meetings, and this one golfer came down in for a meeting, and the first thing she said is, "I don't want to talk about golf." Again, kind of sending me the signal. I don't really want to do this stuff. So I said, okay, that's fine. I respect that. You're scheduled here for 30 minutes. Is there anything you want? We can talk about anything you want. It doesn't have to be anything about golf. And so she sat a little bit, and I could tell she kind of like, okay, she relaxed a little bit. So we started talking about some benign things like her grades or whatever, school, and just and I just listened and having a conversation. And then about 25 minutes in, she goes, "Well, there is something I want to talk about."
In the last 5
Okay.
minutes.
And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, we're almost out of time, but so why don't we, we talked about it a little bit, and then I tell you that by the end of the season, the meetings went longer. She was calling me like during the week because she had questions. She was super engaged.
Wow.
So that was a good lesson for me. I just, again, you don't force it. You don't force it. You're there, and you're there to listen, and that is actually really, really helpful.
And that development of trust too. I think that what was really neat in your story is showing your empathy. That like I care about who you are as a person. It's not just whether or not you've improved by 1% in this.
Right.
Just taking all that other stuff away and say, who are you? What do you have to share today?
Right.
Yeah, I think it comes back to just being genuine, right? And just that example, just being genuine and connecting with people as a human being goes a long way, because we all have something to share. We all have something to share with each other, and so that's my biggest takeaway from that is like just being there for people and being genuine about what you're doing, and showing them you care. I think was it John Wooden that said, athletes don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. So
Exactly.
like that goes a long way, I think, so.
Right. And maybe she had an expectation that you would have been like, well, then you need to get out.
Yeah. I think she was testing me out. She was saying, and she was a very accomplished golfer. I'm sure she has had experiences with, a lot of people trying to help her unsolicited in many cases. So I think she appreciated the fact that I didn't force my stuff upon her.
Well, it's such a perfect example. Thank you for that share.
Yeah.
I want to know, is there, because it sounds like you're really broad and you can offer something to anyone, honestly. I mean, that's kind of what I've gained from this already. But do you kind of have a favorite level or age or sport even? Is there kind of like like, this is my treasure?
When, again, early on when my ego was much more invested, it was like, got to work with professional athletes, got to work with Olympic athletes. That's, if you're working with Olympic athletes and you're working with professional teams, you're at the top of your, the top of your field. And I don't believe that anymore. I think that is just ego. That I've had as much joy in working with a 14-year-old who is getting in his own way and helping and seeing the kind of light switch about how this different way of looking at it will help it and make it more fun. So I don't know that there's a particular favorite. I think it's more when they're engaged, I'm engaged. I mean, I'm loving it. That's like currency. Like they're into it, and they're really, I can tell that they're invested. It doesn't matter what level and what age. Yeah, that's the best.
Maybe that's what made me kind of assume that as the level does increase and, I don't know, all of the risk and reward that comes with it increases, that maybe that currency also increases. But no, it just depends on the person.
Yeah, it's not always the case. Again, sometimes, athletes, even at a higher level, are still not sure why they do it.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of times, there've been, I think the real reason why some people are doing it is because their whole life they've always been identified as doing it like that. And they get a lot of external forces shaping that, and they never really thought, well, is this what I want to do? You know, and so sometimes even with you would think somebody who's playing as their career, their livelihood, they'd be really engaged, but sometimes that's not the case.
That's pretty juicy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had to talk someone off of that edge before, where they come into you and it's confidential, and of course you don't have to drop any names,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm talking about the experience where someone comes to sit in a room and they're like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this. I want to walk away, but yeah, I'm doing it more than 20 hours a week. What is that like in your position?
Again, I get back to, you know, what I'm trying to do is help the person, you know, what's best for them, okay? And I don't want to ever assume the role of my job is to motivate them to play if they don't want to play. So this is a story I had. I had this track and field athlete that I was working with, and she had just finished her junior year of eligibility, but she was a senior, so she was graduating. She had a very successful junior year. The work that we did seemed to help her, and she really did well. And then she had one more year of eligibility, and she was able to enter into the graduate program in sport management, which she was super excited to do. I mean, she really wanted to go. That was her dream career. And I remember, now track and field is interesting because in the fall they don't do much competition. It's mostly just training and training and training. It gets very, very kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
I remember she came to meet me like early December, right at the end of the semester. She came to my office and she said, Kevin, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. She says, it's just so hard. I mean, I'm hurt all the time. I'm in this great graduate program, which I love, but it takes a little more time, and I feel like I'm having to sacrifice, and I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I knew her pretty well. And so I said, okay. I reached over to my phone down in my office. I said, let's call Coach up and tell him you're not going to compete. And as I kind of lifted the receiver up to my ear, she go, hold on. So I said, okay. Now it was like a Friday when we met. And I said, okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the weekend. Just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about it. Okay? And then Monday, come to my office. And, you know, if that's what you decide, then we're calm. Okay? So the weekend goes by. She comes in on Monday. First thing she says to me, I'm not quitting. I'm not going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, what'd you discover? You know, and she said, well, I started thinking about, okay, what did I get out of track and field? I said, first of all, my parents come to every track meet. It's part of our family time. It's how I connect, you know, and I've done that since I was little. Says, second, I'm not a quitter. You know, I'm not gonna. It's hard. Yeah, it's really hard, but I'm not a quitter. That's not who I am. Okay, I made a commitment to the coach and the team. I'm not giving up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went on and had a really, really nice senior season. Ended on her own terms. Went on and started her career. It was great. It was a really great experience.
And what motivation could be more powerful than the one that just came from in her head and in her heart?
Yeah.
So was picking up the phone a trick, or was it completely sincere? You were ready to dial up?
I was ready to dial up.
I figured that. I just wanted to check.
But I also knew that she wasn't going to let me make that call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the other thing.
But you could have sat there and lectured her and tried to convince her, but it needed to come from her.
Exactly. I could have tried to say no. You know, and again, then that's going to feel more forced. It's another voice in her life, and athletes get a lot of them. That's telling them what to do. And I don't. That's, as a sports psychologist, I don't want to be that voice. Okay, that's the voice that we're actually trying to learn how to overcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you have a specific approach to mindfulness? I feel like that's maybe part of where the Buddhist influences come from.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think every change starts with awareness. That when you bring something into judgmental, present-centered awareness, you change your relationship to it. And I mean, that's the big core of Buddhist philosophy, and the Four Noble Truths, and how to move past those things. Now, what's happened recently is there's been a lot of empirical, theoretical and empirical science that's now kind of reinforced that, in the form of, say, acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness-based therapies, where they found that, again, by bringing things into awareness, you open the door for much greater change. So I'm a big, obviously, that's a huge piece. Every athlete that I work with, we will talk about mindfulness. We probably engage in some type of meditation training.
Do you mind explaining maybe how you do that? I'm not trying to take your tricks of the trade, but
No, not at all. They're not my tricks.
People probably have very scattered and full thoughts, and it's the mindful, mindless, looking at.
Well, we
things.
start with something, again, like the breath. The breath is something that occurs in the present moment. It's a sensory phenomenon. So when you engage your mind to the breath, you are making a connection to the present moment. And when you engage your mind into a sense, you occupy enough space with that sense that there's no room for the distracting thoughts to also exist there. So it's the way that we can very quickly achieve a present-centered awareness. And then you can expand it to other senses. You could expand it to listening, smelling things, but even expand it to the awareness of thoughts themselves, which actually is a type of sense. It's with mindfulness. As you say, okay, what kind of thoughts do I notice that are happening? Again, in this non-judgmental way.
And learning how to let them go.
Yeah, because that changes your relationship to it. So all of a sudden, it isn't that you're angry. It's that, okay, there's some angry thoughts in there. And so that removes you from the anger into the awareness that, well, there's some angry thoughts there. And then it opens the door where then you can maybe decide what you want your next action to be.
So that sounds like a really perfect way of explaining the reasoning and the approach. And then from that, do you take them actually through, or do you just say, like, I would like to give you the assignment, like, over the weekend, can you try this?
Yeah, so what I've learned now, it's gotten better. Technology has helped. There are many wonderful apps, meditation apps that are out there. But I definitely will, in a 30-minute session with somebody that I'm meeting regularly, we will often go 5 to 10 minutes of me taking them through a meditation practice, so that I feel like they have a good idea of how to do that.
I think this is a huge key to be able to perform at a higher level with athletes, right? Because we talk about living in the present moment. Well, when we teach mindfulness or meditation training, like that ties straight directly to sport or performance or whatever anyone's doing, or life, and it's something I've done for a long time, and I didn't really see the benefits of it right away. It took years of doing this consistently to understand, like, this is helping me in many areas besides, for my stress and anxiety, all these different things. It's super beneficial, right? But it takes practice to do, and I think this is something we have to, like, athletes need to understand, is like, this isn't going to overnight fix. Like, we have to do this consistently with a conscious effort. So I think mindfulness is huge, or meditation, but it's amazing stuff.
Just to clarify, how did you say that you came upon meditation in your life?
So,
because you said you've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, mine was a friend of mine was kind of really into yoga, and I used to think, okay, that's weird, and I got out of the military and needed something. I needed something as a positive outlet. So a friend introduced me to an app, and he was like, hey, try this out, like, check this out. And so I started doing it pretty consistently, usually after a workout, and found it was just super beneficial. So I've continued to do it, whether it's on my own or with guided meditation. So it's a huge benefit. So sometimes my wife will catch me in the living room doing it, and like, what are you doing? I'm like, leave me alone. So it's pretty cool. It's good stuff.
And it wasn't necessarily something that you were raised with. It came to you in your process.
Yeah, not at all. I was in my early 20s and probably experiencing some type of existential crisis. I had a buddy that I was teaching tennis to and he was we were really close. We really started kind of looking at things. He was kind of similar to me. We started reading books. We started with Carlos Castaneda, Journey to Ixtlan, and then Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. We just read tons of books, and we the common theme it was coming kind of steering us towards this idea of the power of mindfulness and meditation, and so we started experimenting with meditating, and kind of went from there. I never went to a meditation school or anything like that, or never really had a teacher. I just kind of started to play around with it on my own, and if I had questions, I would go find books and read more, and it made great sense to me, about, again, because I was, all through my life I've been competing, in tennis, and I took up running. I've always competed, and even now I play golf. It's something I love to do, and I was always wanting to find, figure out how meditation kind of coexisted with competing, and that's really kind of where it kind of led into eventually when I got into sports psychology. I said, this has got to be a piece. Yeah.
And so in this practice, especially building up over time, almost like, I don't know, a foundation of a house, has it become like you have shortcuts to reach that place? Because it was such a long process, now you can maybe access that place of like, I'm mindful, I'm very present right now. Yeah,
I would like to think so, but it hasn't really been that way. Some mornings I'll sit, and I very quickly find this stillness and this calmness. And other mornings I'll sit, and I can't even remember meditating. I've got so many thoughts that have gone through my head. And my timer goes off, and I go, that I didn't meditate. I was just totally off on all these things. But I've learned not to judge that. Not to say, well, that was bad meditation practice. No, it was what it was. It was that my mind was very active, and that's all it was.
And no judgment.
So I'd love to say I've kind of mastered that, and I can get into the zone and at the snap of a finger, but that's not the case.
I appreciate your honesty, because there are others of us who are like, I feel like I have a long way to go.
I think Kevin hit on it earlier. Like, I think with mindfulness, it's a process. It's going to take time with practice. I do it sometimes the same thing where I'm like, so many things racing through my head, but I think it's the 10 minutes for myself, right? I'm by myself, and if I think we can teach other people that take 10 minutes to be with yourself, right? With your own thoughts, your own breathing in that moment. So I think it's just very useful tool. Getting into this career field without a license, you're just a mental performance coach or sport and performance psychology coach, right? And versus the clinical psychologist route.
But I think the field is gaining more acceptance, and this is what you and I talked a lot about. Is I think when you're coming in from the sports science aspect, we're educational, we're coaches more than we're therapists. When you come in from the clinical end, you're really coming in as a therapist. And I think a lot of organizations now are understanding that, yes, they need therapy, they need the therapy aspect, but they also want the coaching aspect because that gives them a competitive edge. So I feel like if you think 25, 30 years ago, not a lot of organizations even had strength and conditioning coaches, and then they started to see the benefit of having specialized strength and conditioning coaches. That's where sports psychology is going, and I've seen it. It's moving in that direction. But there isn't the entitlement now. So this is what I've told you. You have to really, be good at what you do. You have to find your niche. You have to become, good at your niche. So I think there are pathways there, but it requires the student to be a little bit more kind of entrepreneurial, creative, and really have to work their craft.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, is going to be education of coaches, right? Coaches understanding what your role would be and how it would benefit athletes. So that's kind of what I'm starting to understand is like, you got to educate some coaches on how this is going to benefit his athletes or their athletes in general. And I like the challenge, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But it comes back to being genuine and connecting with people. And that, I think, goes a long way, more than anything else, right? And so I think if you could do that as a mental performance coach or sports psychology consultant, you're going to go a long way. So we'll see what happens. But it's exciting stuff, exciting times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find it very common that you are doing consultations with coaches specifically?
Yeah, I mean that's crucial for I feel again for my work to be effective is to have open communication, frequent communication, with the coaches, because they kind of help spread that, hey, what Kevin is doing is effective. So if I've got a coach who's saying, well, okay, we're going to get Kevin, the sports psychologist, because everyone has sports psychology, but I don't really care about it. The athletes are going to sense that, and it's gonna make my job a lot harder. And plus it goes both ways. I ask the coaches questions about what's happening with the athletes when they're competing, when I'm not able to see them, so I can get the picture that the coach sees. But then the coach is also asking me questions about, is there, maybe are there ways that I could coach this athlete better? So I think that, when I have that kind of relationship with the coach, it's much more effective with the work I do with the athletes.
That's really powerful. I can see how being a bridge builder in that regard is wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't even mean that in a way that it's like an interference that you need to be in the middle of it, but the fact that you could really facilitate stronger communication just from being so sensitive to where these people are at.
I think from my short time doing it so far is coaches need some education as well, and they want to make sure that they're doing the right things, and so they'll come to you and ask you questions about their coaching style or certain things about the team or the certain athlete, because they want some guidance as well. I'm starting to notice that too. Or maybe there's a miscommunication between coaches and they want to, some reassurance or want some guidance about how they can go approach this other coach and talk to them about what's going on within the team dynamic. So I think it's an interesting role for sure. And as long as we're able to communicate that we're not going to have bias in any way, and we're not going to go run to the head coach and tell him everything that coaches are saying about other people or players, it's going to be a good relationship to have, and I think it's hopefully a good role, and we'll see what happens. But
Absolutely. Have you been involved in lots of conflict resolution, just helping to calm some of those difficult moments?
At times I have. One of the things that when you do the work, you're going to for sure get is you're going to get the athletes complaining about the coach. Coach is unfair. Coach is too hard. You have athletes complaining about other athletes and not getting along, and you have to understand that all that stuff is normal. When you put a group of people together, you're going to have conflict. You're going to have some drama. So, again, this is where I think the sports sciences come in when we learn about, cohesion and that kind of stuff. This is where we can, again, educate both the athletes and the coaches about ways that they can maybe manage or deal with the drama or the tension. Yeah, encourage them to be, better communication and that kind of stuff.
And typically they do.
Sometimes. Sometimes the personalities are very strong, and it's difficult. Yeah.
But I'm sure the better the relationships can be strengthened, the more we can have things that carry over into the rest of our lives. Even if sometimes it's a fact of endurance.
Yeah.
Like I endured that season, it was difficult for reasons X, Y, and Z. And sometimes it's personal, like an injury, and sometimes it's relationship based. But yeah, nice to have some supports to go to through all of it.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a transition. Can you tell us what are some ways that you're continuing to grow? What are you studying or looking to?
So usually when I look for books to read or outside sources, it falls into one of two categories for me. One is inspirational, and the other is informational. So I kind of fluctuate between. Sometimes I feel like I need some inspiration, just maybe just a philosophical kind of reboot on what I'm doing and why I feel it's important, and I'll go to books like that. And then sometimes it's more, informational. I'm looking for that. A lot of times I'll go through the scientific journals and look at some studies that have been done using either cognitive behavioral or humanistic, ACT, mindfulness stuff, and just see, how they're doing their interventions and see if I can learn some stuff that way. So I'm always trying to find better ways to say things or newer ways to say things or different approaches to take, and to me that makes it really a lot of fun.
I love that that's such a growth mindset, that you're focused on sharpening yourself as a tool so you can be of most benefit in any given situation. Because there can be this tendency, you had addressed it earlier, like, I've been doing this a while, I work with so-and-so, they make me feel pretty proud of myself, that you can let that stuff go and not realize that things have been refined or reformed or that a particular approach could be better.
Right.
So that's, I think it says a lot about your personal quest. That nobody else is going to judge you or give you the grade. You're beyond that point now. You're the lecturer working with the students.
Well, it's also I want to practice what I preach, and so I'm what I feel really strongly about is we want to take this infinite path towards growth, not just short-sighted and say, well, we're just trying to win a championship. No, instead of focusing on trying to win a championship, how about focusing on developing a process that consistently gives you the best chance every time that you go and you compete? And all you focus your energy now on is creating, maintaining, refining, and improving that process. And I think it's the same for me. I rather than say, well, I want to be the best sports psychologist in the world or something like that, which is very fine. I said, I just want to continue to become better and better at what I do. That's it. And if I just feel like I'm continuing to be better and better at what I do, then I trust whatever is going to come out of that. So I have to live it if I'm going to, encourage, athletes to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, every day we need to learn. It's a new learning opportunity, and the moment we stop learning is the moment we're going to fail ourselves. So I think every day of life is a learning opportunity. We should continue to always want to learn and strive for more. And I think part of what I'm learning is doing stuff like this and being able to learn from other people, having a relationship with a person that's been doing it for a very long time. And also just talking to your athletes. And so getting feedback from athletes for me, was huge. It's huge starting out. I want to hear from them, and they'll tell you the truth. They'll tell you on your feedback forms what they really liked, what they didn't like. And just doing stuff like that and constantly learning from other people and asking the right questions and not being afraid to ask questions too. So I completely agree with all of that.
Is there any question that you want to shoot over to Kevin? I know he's actually already asked you quite a lot of questions.
I just appreciate all the information and guidance he's given me up to this point, and hopefully we continue to do this, for the rest of our careers, because I think it's just beneficial for everyone that's involved, you and I and other people that we're going to be able to influence and help, through this field. But I think it's about finding the right fit as a mentor, like having a mentor that's a right fit for you and them. And I think sometimes some things are forced, and you need to just have someone you can rely on and talk to for anything, and I think that's a huge thing in this field, is to have someone that you can trust and ask any question to, So
you're very generous with your time.
I love doing it. I mean, I had mentors. I had people that I could call up, and I think that's important to contribute to the field. I mean, that's part of why I got into teaching in college. I mean, it wasn't just to teach the classes; it was to forge, relationships with students that would help them grow. And any opportunity I have to do that, I mean, I love to do it.
And you're doing it full time.
Yeah. Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm very, very, very fortunate to be able to have that opportunity.
And do you keep those classes pretty fresh? Do you change them up, or do you feel like I have a system and it's?
No, it's funny. I was telling like, so I have this undergraduate sports psychology class that I've been teaching since I started at Long Beach State.
The one where Bryan met you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I counted it up last semester. I probably taught over 100 sections of that class. So I've got that class 100 times. And you would think, okay, I'd be just bored to death. Like, oh gosh, I have to. Every time, to me, it's different. I add new things. I become more creative the more I teach it, because I know it so well. So I look for even another way to present it. So no, I don't get bored at all with those classes. I just love changing them up. And
I wish I had been in your class.
not too late. You can sit in anytime you want.
I must. That's such a great a great invitation.
Yeah.
And it sounds too that you're speaking to listeners. You know, that you have something to impart, and when everybody is dead-eyed, that maybe you would go, okay, well, we're done here.
Yeah.
Because you're not in that classroom talking to yourself. You're not repeating the information for yourself. It's like you're bringing something new. That's, I don't know, a gift of communication, I guess.
I'm trying.
What's some guidance you can give someone that wants to, start getting into this field? Like, just like, all of us here in this room, we're getting into this field, we're finishing up our grad program, but someone that's got an interest in this, that's not quite sure if they want to go this route, but what's some guidance you may have for them?
Well, and a lot of it I've talked to you about is, first of all, forget about, the goal of making a lot of money and being famous. Whether that happens or not, you can't worry about that. Do something where you're helping people, and just do it. Whether you're coaching, personal training, anything, and you don't have to do it for money. But just that, it's kind of like you're a musician. I mean, that's your gig. You're just trying to find your sound, and as you do that, then start to acquire the information, that then helps to make you do it better. So. I told you this a long time ago. I gave my services away for many years before I started to make any money doing it. And it was really, I did that on purpose because I wanted to get really good at what I did. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And not just worry about, well, I need to charge this or this or this, because if I started charging it and I didn't get as much business, then I wouldn't have as many opportunities to continue to get better. Mm-hmm. I needed to have those opportunities to make mistakes and then learn from those mistakes. So just get out there and volunteer to coach a team, and just so that you can learn how to communicate and interact with people. That's really key. And then acquire the information as you go along. I mean, you've got to really work hard at that. I mean, you have to work hard at getting the degrees, getting into graduate schools, and that kind of stuff. But more than anything, you've got to find your passion for it by, interacting with people as much as you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's huge, and because that's what we do with this field, or whether it's teaching, or working as a sports psychology consultant or coach. We're always interacting with people, and it's always educational. It's always teaching. So. I think it's huge, is being able to connect with people and be comfortable doing it, in a genuine way, not a fake sales kind of way, in a genuine, passionate way. So it's huge.
People can tell. They can tell if it's inauthentic.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely can.
Do you have any other stories or parting advice that you would like to leave with us?
Well, this is to me, doing this for this long. It's as exciting a field to me now as it's ever been. Mm-hmm. I was working with two athletes before, in the morning, and I loved it. And I've got a workshop I'm doing tomorrow, and I can't wait for it to start. It's just wonderful. And so fall in love with the field. And then the field will love you. It will come back, and you'll be fine. If you fall in love with what you do, that's the payment. I mean, you're going to get paid if you do that, because you're going to do it well. And I think just forget about all the other things. Get that ego out of there. Like, I want to be like this person, or this person's more famous than me, and you gotta forget that. Mm-hmm. Again, when you're in the trenches, sitting down with an athlete, and you're connecting, and it's helping, and you're connecting. That's the best. Mm-hmm. That's the best. And just that's what you need to do.
I think one thing for me that I've learned too is, don't be afraid of an opportunity. So if you have an opportunity to work with some athletes or work with a team, don't be afraid to take that for any reason. Take the risk, right? Go help out as much as you can. Learn from other people. Ask questions and go help a team. And, Kevin said it before, and I'll say it, is we're going to make mistakes every day in life. And every day in this field, we're going to make a mistake, but it's how we learn from it. How do we overcome it? How do we bounce back from that? Just like we talk with athletes about making mistakes. So I think it's huge just to take a risk, and if you have an opportunity, run with it, you know, and go have fun doing it. You know, I met someone recently, I was telling him a little about what I'm trying to get into, and he's like, enjoy the process. It's just have fun with what you're doing. I was like, thank you for saying that. So I'm a true believer in that. We just have fun with everything that we're doing.
I feel like it's definitely communicated in the way that you talk about it and in the advice and experiences that you've had, that you definitely share a genuine passion. It's really exciting to feel the glow from right here. So you didn't ask me for a plug. I'm just going to say it anyway because people might wonder that your website is thepracticefix.com. To learn more about you. I'd also like to again mention your book, which I can't wait to read, The Performance Mindset, a Process-Focused System, which is definitely intended for the athletes, right? I had asked you before we recorded if this was a textbook. No. It's really the process.
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing today, both of you. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you,
Yeah,
and
it was
I
awesome.
appreciate you doing this and getting the word out and getting the information out. No, that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, this is awesome. This is how we're all going to learn and grow. So thank you for having us, or me.
Yep.